Have you ever noticed that your English doesn't disappear at the beginning of a conversation? It disappears between sentences. You say one sentence confidently, then suddenly your mind goes blank. You know you have more to say, but the next sentence never comes. The silence grows, your confidence drops, and you start translating instead of speaking. The problem isn't your vocabulary. It isn't your grammar. It's the missing mental bridge that connects one English thought to the next. In this audiobook, you will build that bridge. You will train your brain to keep your ideas flowing, continue speaking naturally, and stop freezing after every sentence. Stay with me until the end, because once your brain learns to connect thoughts instead of chasing perfect words, speaking English will begin to feel natural, confident, and continuous. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Stop thinking in separate sentences. Start thinking in connected ideas. One of the biggest reasons English learners lose confidence is not because they cannot make a sentence. It is because they cannot make the next sentence. Think about it for a moment. Someone asks you a simple question. What did you do this weekend? You answer, I visited my cousin. Then, silence. Your brain suddenly feels empty. You know the conversation should continue, but you cannot find the next thought. You begin translating, searching for vocabulary, worrying about grammar, and within seconds, your confidence disappears. Many learners believe this happens because their vocabulary is too small. It doesn't. Others believe their grammar is weak. That is not the real reason either. The real problem is that your brain has been trained to produce individual English sentences, but it has never been trained to connect them together. Imagine trying to cross a river where only one stone exists. You can stand on that first stone, but you cannot move forward because there is no bridge leading to the other side. That is exactly what happens during English conversations. Your first sentence is the first stone. Your second sentence is missing. The good news is that this is not a talent. It is a skill, and every skill can be trained. Fluent speakers are not constantly inventing brilliant ideas. They simply know how to connect one idea to another. They understand that speaking is not about creating perfect sentences. It is about creating a continuous flow of thoughts. Listen carefully to people who speak English naturally. They rarely stop after one sentence. Instead, they continue effortlessly. I visited my cousin because it was his birthday. We had lunch together, and then we went for a long walk. The weather was beautiful, so we spent most of the day outside. Notice what happened. Each sentence became the beginning of another one. One thought naturally opened the door for the next. That is exactly how your brain should learn to speak. Unfortunately, most learners study English differently. Schools often teach isolated grammar exercises. They ask you to translate one sentence, complete one sentence, correct one sentence, memorize one sentence. Your brain becomes excellent at building separate pieces, but nobody teaches you how to join those pieces into one long conversation. Imagine someone giving you hundreds of beautiful puzzle pieces, but never showing you how they fit together. That is how many English learners feel. They know many words. They understand grammar. They can even answer grammar tests successfully. Yet when a real conversation begins, everything falls apart because conversations are not collections of separate sentences. They are connected stories. They are connected emotions. They are connected ideas. This is why you must stop thinking sentence by sentence. Instead, begin thinking in small groups of ideas. For example, imagine someone asks, "What is your favorite season?" Most learners immediately search for one perfect answer. "My favorite season is winter." Then they stop. Instead, train yourself to think in 3 connected ideas. First, answer the question. My favorite season is winter. Second, explain why. I enjoy winter because the weather feels peaceful. Third, add a personal experience. I usually drink hot coffee, read books, and spend more time with my family. Now you have spoken naturally for almost 30 seconds without searching desperately for new topics. Nothing complicated happened. You simply followed a bridge. Answer. Reason. Example. Let's try another one. What do you usually do after work? Instead of stopping after, I go home. Continue. I go home because I like relaxing after a busy day. After dinner, I usually spend 30 minutes practicing English. My goal is to become more confident every week. Can you see what happened? One idea invited another, then another, then another. Speaking became easier because your brain no longer had to invent completely new subjects every few seconds. It simply continued walking across the bridge. Here is another mistake learners make. They believe every sentence must be interesting. That pressure is exhausting. Real conversations are not built from extraordinary ideas. They are built from ordinary ideas connected naturally. Imagine talking about breakfast. I woke up a little late this morning, so I made a quick breakfast. I only had eggs and tea. After that, I started working. Nothing is dramatic. Nothing is difficult. But together, those simple sentences create smooth, natural English. This is exactly how native speakers communicate most of the time. They are not constantly trying to sound intelligent. They are simply continuing the conversation. You should also stop fearing pauses. A short pause is completely normal. The problem begins when the pause turns into panic. The moment you panic, your brain starts searching for perfect vocabulary instead of continuing the message. Instead of asking yourself, what is the perfect sentence? Ask yourself, what is one more thing I can say about this? That single question can completely change your speaking. Suppose you are describing your hometown. Instead of stopping after, my hometown is small. Ask yourself, what else? It is surrounded by beautiful mountains. What else? The people are very friendly. What else? I really miss the food whenever I travel. Suddenly, one sentence becomes 4. 4 become 8. 8 become a real conversation. This is not because your English magically improved overnight. It is because your brain finally learned how to keep moving. Remember this carefully. Fluency is not the ability to create one perfect sentence. Fluency is the ability to continue after the first sentence. Every time your brain asks, what should I say next? Do not panic. Simply answer with another small idea. Then another. Then another. Because conversations are not built from perfect English. They are built from connected thoughts. And from today, that is exactly what you are going to train. Not how to speak one beautiful sentence, but how to build the mental bridge that carries your voice from one idea to the next, without fear, without silence, and without stopping. Chapter 2. Stop searching for the perfect word. Keep the conversation alive. Have you ever noticed what happens the moment you forget one English word? Everything stops. Your ideas are still there. You know exactly what you want to say, but because one important word disappears, your entire conversation disappears with it. Your brain begins searching desperately through everything you have learned. Seconds feel like minutes. The silence grows longer. Your confidence falls lower. And eventually you say, sorry, I don't know. Most learners believe they stopped because they forgot one word. That isn't what happened. They stopped because they believed the conversation could not continue without that one word. Fluent English speakers think very differently. When they forget a word, they do not stop speaking. They simply take another path. Imagine you want to say the word umbrella, but suddenly your mind cannot remember it. but suddenly your mind cannot remember it. A beginner freezes. A fluent speaker says, "The thing people use when it rains." The message continues. Imagine you forget the word microwave. Instead of giving up, you say, "The machine that heats food very quickly." If you forget the word passport, you simply say, "The document you need before traveling to another country." Notice something very important. Communication never stopped. The exact word disappeared, but the idea remained alive. That is what real fluency looks like. Many learners spend years memorizing thousands of vocabulary words because they believe fluent speakers know every English word. They don't. Even native speakers sometimes forget names, expressions, and vocabulary. The difference is that they never panic. They explain, they describe, they compare, they give examples. Most importantly, they keep talking. This is one of the most powerful speaking habits you can ever develop. Your goal is not to know every word. Your goal is to know how to continue when you don't. Imagine your conversation as a flowing river. Every forgotten word is simply a small rock. If you stop at every rock, the river stops flowing. But if you move around it, the river continues naturally. Your English should work the same way. Let's imagine someone asks, "What is your favorite hobby?" You want to say, "I enjoy photography," but you suddenly forget the word photography. Should the conversation end? Of course not. You could simply say, "I like taking pictures with my camera." The listener understands you perfectly. Now the conversation continues. Suppose someone asks, "What did you buy yesterday?" You forget the word wallet. Instead of becoming silent, you say, "I bought the small thing where people keep money and cards." Again, the conversation survives. Every time you successfully explain an idea instead of giving up, your brain becomes stronger. Slowly, something incredible begins to happen. Instead of depending on memorized vocabulary, you begin depending on communication itself. That is exactly how confident speakers think. Here is another powerful habit. When you cannot remember one word, immediately ask yourself, what does it do? What does it look like? Where do people use it? What is it similar to? These 4 simple questions give your brain new paths. Instead of searching for one locked door, you suddenly discover 4 open doors. Suppose you forget the word helmet. Ask yourself, what does it do? It protects your head. Where do people use it? People wear it when riding motorcycles or bicycles. What does it look like? It is hard and covers your head. Without ever saying the missing word, you successfully communicate the idea. That is speaking. Many learners believe this kind of explanation makes their English sound weak. Actually, it makes their English stronger. Why? Because now they are thinking directly in English instead of translating one perfect vocabulary word from their native language. They are creating English with the language they already know. That is exactly how fluency grows. There is another hidden benefit. Every time you explain an unknown word, you automatically practice grammar, sentence building, and speaking confidence at the same time. One forgotten word becomes 5 new English sentences. Instead of losing practice, you gain even more. This completely changes the way your brain reacts during conversations. Instead of thinking, "I forgot one word," your brain begins thinking, "I have many different ways to explain this." Can you feel the difference? One thought creates fear. The other creates freedom. Freedom is where fluent speaking begins. From today, I want you to stop measuring your English by the number of words you know. Measure it by the number of conversations you can continue. Because people do not remember whether every word you used was perfect. They remember whether they understood your message. And if they understand you, then communication has already succeeded. Remember this whenever your brain goes blank. Do not ask, "Where is the perfect word?" Ask, "How else can I explain this?" That one question will save hundreds of future conversations. Because the strongest English speakers are not the people who know the most vocabulary. They are the people who never allow one missing word to silence an entire conversation. And once your brain learns this habit, something amazing happens. Your fear of forgetting words begins to disappear. Your confidence grows. Your pauses become shorter. Your conversations become longer. And slowly, almost without noticing, the mental bridge between one sentence and the next becomes stronger every single day. Chapter 3. Stop listening for the next word. Start following the next idea. There is a habit that quietly destroys thousands of English conversations every single day. Most learners are not listening to understand. They are listening to survive. The moment another person starts speaking, instead of focusing on the message, their brain begins working overtime. What vocabulary did they use? What tense was that? How should I answer? What if I don't understand? Before the speaker even finishes the sentence, the learner has already left the conversation and entered their own mind. Then something predictable happens. The speaker finishes talking. The learner understands only half of the message. Their brain goes blank. The conversation stops. If this has happened to you, I want you to understand something important. Your problem is not listening. Your problem is where your attention goes while you are listening. Fluent speakers do something completely different. They are not chasing every single word. They are chasing the main idea. Imagine someone says, "Yesterday I was supposed to meet my friend, but because of heavy traffic, we arrived almost an hour late, so we decided to eat somewhere closer instead." A beginner immediately worries. What does "supposed to" mean? What was the second verb? Did they say traffic or transport? While they are analyzing individual words, the conversation keeps moving. A fluent listener hears something much simpler. "My friend. Traffic. Late. Change the plan." They immediately understand the story. Notice the difference. One brain collects words. The other brain collects meaning. That single difference changes everything. Think about how you watch a movie. When you watch a film in your native language, you do not analyze every sentence. You simply follow the story. You understand one event, then the next, then the next. Your brain naturally connects ideas. English should become the same. Stop trying to understand every leaf. See the whole tree. Many learners believe they must understand 100% before they can answer confidently. That belief creates fear. The truth is very different. Even native speakers sometimes miss words during conversations. People speak quickly. Background noise exists. Voices overlap. Yet conversations continue because people focus on the message, not perfection. Imagine someone says, "I've been incredibly busy this week because we are preparing for an important family event." Perhaps you missed the word "preparing." Does the conversation end? Of course not. You still understand the important idea. The person has been busy because of something happening with their family. That understanding is enough to continue speaking. You can simply respond, "Oh, that sounds exciting. What kind of family event is it? Look at what happened." You didn't need every word. You needed the direction of the conversation. This is exactly how fluent communication works. Another mistake learners make is trying to prepare their answer before the other person finishes speaking. This is one of the fastest ways to lose the conversation. Imagine your friend asks, "What did you think about the new restaurant we visited last weekend?" Before they even finish the question, your brain starts building an answer. I'll say the food was good. I'll mention the service. I'll use the word delicious. While you are building your speech, you stop listening. Then your friend adds, especially the dessert everyone was talking about. But you never hear that part. Now your prepared answer no longer matches the conversation. This happens because your brain cannot fully listen and fully prepare at exactly the same time. First listen, then think, then speak. Always in that order. There is another powerful habit that fluent speakers use without realizing it. After hearing one idea, they naturally ask themselves, what comes next? For example, my brother got a new job. Immediately the brain expects another idea. Where? When? How? Why? Instead of stopping after the first sentence, your mind naturally stays connected. Now imagine someone says, my brother got a new job in another city. Again your brain asks, what happened next? He moved there last month. Now the story continues. Your mind follows the bridge from one idea to another instead of becoming stuck on individual words. This is exactly how you should train your listening. Do not chase vocabulary. Chase the story. Do not collect words. Collect meaning. Do not ask, did I understand every sentence? Ask, do I understand where this conversation is going? That single question removes enormous pressure from your mind. Here is a simple exercise you can begin today. Whenever you listen to English, whether it is a podcast, an audiobook, a conversation, or a video, stop trying to repeat every sentence. Instead, after every 30 seconds, pause the audio and explain the main idea in your own words. Not the exact words. The idea. If someone talked about traveling, explain the journey. If someone described a problem, explain the problem. If someone shared a memory, explain the story. This trains your brain to focus on communication instead of memorization. Slowly, something incredible begins to happen. Your listening becomes calmer. Your mind stops panicking every time an unfamiliar word appears. Your attention stays on the conversation instead of your fears. Then another change appears. Because you understand the direction of the conversation, your own answers become longer. You no longer respond with one short sentence. You naturally continue because your brain is connected to the speaker's ideas. Remember this truth. Conversations are not built from perfect vocabulary. They are built from connected meaning. When your brain learns to follow ideas instead of individual words, the silence between your English sentences becomes shorter. The fear becomes smaller. The confidence becomes stronger. And little by little, you discover that the mental bridge you have been searching for was never hidden inside more vocabulary. It was hidden inside a new way of listening. Chapter 4. Train your brain to continue speaking before the silence begins. Most English learners believe their problem starts when they go blank. It doesn't. Their problem starts several seconds earlier. The silence that appears during a conversation is not created in the moment you stop speaking. It is created by the way your brain prepares to speak before that moment ever arrives. Think about the last time you had an English conversation. You answered the first question. While speaking your first sentence, you used almost all of your mental energy trying to remember vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation. By the time you reached the end of the sentence, your brain had nothing left. It had spent every bit of attention on surviving the first sentence instead of preparing for the second. That is why the silence appears. Not because you have nothing to say, but because your brain has already exhausted itself. Fluent speakers work differently. While their mouth is finishing one sentence, their mind is already preparing the next idea. They are always one step ahead. Imagine watching someone cross a river. An inexperienced person stands on one stone. looks down, searches for the next step, becomes nervous, and almost loses balance. An experienced person has already seen the next 3 stones before taking the first step. Speaking English works exactly the same way. If your brain only thinks about the sentence you are speaking right now, you will almost always stop at the end of it. But if your brain quietly prepares the next idea while your mouth is still talking, your conversation begins to flow naturally. This is a habit you can train. Imagine someone asks, "What do you usually do on weekends?" Most learners answer like this: "I usually stay at home." Then they stop. Why? Because they never planned what would come next. Now watch what happens when your brain works one step ahead. Before you even finish saying, "I usually stay at home," your mind is already preparing. "Because I enjoy reading books." While saying that, your brain prepares another idea. Sometimes I also watch English videos. Before finishing that sentence, another idea appears. I've been trying to improve my speaking every weekend. Now something incredible happens. You are no longer speaking one sentence at a time. You are walking across a bridge of connected ideas. Each sentence naturally creates the next one. This is exactly what fluent speakers do without realizing it. Here is another reason learners become silent. They believe every pause is a mistake. The moment they stop for 1 second, panic begins. "Oh no, I'm forgetting. My English is terrible." They think I'm not fluent. Those thoughts steal even more attention from your brain. Now you are fighting 2 battles. One battle is finding your next idea. The other is fighting your own fear. No wonder your mind goes blank. From today, I want you to replace panic with preparation. As you finish one sentence, ask yourself one simple question. What can I add? Not, what is the perfect sentence? Not, what advanced vocabulary should I use? Simply, what can I add? That tiny question keeps your brain moving forward. Let's practice together. Suppose you say, "I enjoy learning English." Immediately ask, "What can I add?" Because it helps me communicate with people from different countries. Again, what can I add? My biggest goal is to speak confidently without translating. Again, what can I add? That's why I practice every single day, even if I only have 15 minutes. Can you see what happened? You didn't search for difficult grammar. You didn't memorize complicated expressions. You simply continued adding ideas. That is how conversations become longer. Another powerful habit is learning to think in branches instead of lines. Most learners think in a straight line. Sentence, stop. Sentence, stop. Sentence, stop. Instead, imagine every sentence as the trunk of a tree. From that trunk, many branches can grow. For example, I love traveling. One branch is because I enjoy meeting new people. Another branch is my favorite destination was Turkey. Another branch is I hope to visit more countries in the future. One simple sentence has suddenly become an entire conversation. The more branches your brain learns to create, the less likely you are to run out of things to say. This is not about speaking more words. It is about discovering more directions. There is one final exercise that can completely change your speaking confidence. Choose any simple topic: your family, your hometown, your job, your favorite food. Now challenge yourself to speak for 1 full minute without stopping. Not by speaking faster, but by continuously asking, what else? What else can I explain? What else can I describe? What else can I remember? What else can I share? At first, 1 minute may feel impossible. After a few days, it becomes easier. Soon 2 minutes no longer feels difficult. Then 3, then 5. Not because your English suddenly became perfect, but because your brain finally learned how to keep moving instead of stopping after every sentence. Remember this truth whenever you begin another English conversation. Fluency is not created by speaking faster. It is created by thinking further. While your mouth speaks one idea, your mind should already be gently preparing the next. That simple habit becomes the invisible bridge between every sentence you speak. And once your brain learns to stay one step ahead instead of one step behind, those uncomfortable silences begin to disappear. Not because you memorized more English, but because you finally trained your mind to keep the conversation alive. Chapter 5. Build conversation chains instead of memorizing individual sentences. One of the biggest mistakes English learners make is believing that fluency comes from memorizing thousands of perfect sentences. They spend months writing notebooks full of useful expressions, repeating grammar patterns, and learning long vocabulary lists. Yet when a real conversation begins, they still freeze after speaking 1 or 2 sentences. This happens because memorized sentences are like single bricks. A brick by itself cannot become a house. It must connect with many other bricks before it becomes something strong and useful. English works exactly the same way. A single sentence is valuable, but fluency appears only when one sentence naturally leads to another. Think about a child learning to speak. Children do not memorize speeches. They learn small connections between ideas. One thought reminds them of another. One memory creates another memory. One question naturally leads to another answer. Slowly, those small connections become automatic, and speaking no longer feels like hard work. That is exactly the process your brain needs to experience in English. Many learners accidentally train themselves in the opposite direction. They study isolated examples like, "My name is David. I like coffee. I live in Canada." These sentences are useful, but they are disconnected. Your brain never learns how to move smoothly from one idea to another because every practice session starts and ends with separate examples. Then, during a conversation, your mind waits for another memorized sentence instead of creating a natural connection. Imagine someone asks you, "Tell me about yourself." Most learners answer with something very short. "My name is Ahmed. I am 26 years old. I live in Lahore." Then their mind becomes completely silent because they have reached the end of the sentences they memorized. Now imagine answering the same question differently. "My name is Ahmed and I live in Lahore. I have always enjoyed learning new languages because I love meeting people from different cultures. Recently, I started spending more time improving my English because I want to communicate more confidently in my career. Every day I challenge myself to practice speaking, even if I make mistakes, because I know confidence grows through practice, not perfection." Notice what happened. None of those sentences were complicated. The difference was not vocabulary. The difference was connection. Each sentence naturally created the next one. The city led to interests. The interests led to goals. The goals led to daily habits. That is a conversation chain. This is how fluent speakers organize their thoughts without even realizing it. They rarely ask themselves, "What sentence should I say next?" Instead, they ask, "What idea naturally comes after this one?" Their attention stays on the conversation instead of on individual grammar rules. Because of that, their speech feels relaxed, connected, and effortless. You can train this ability every single day. Take one simple sentence. "I enjoy reading." Now challenge yourself to build a chain instead of stopping. "I enjoy reading because books allow me to explore different ways of thinking." Most of the books I read are about personal growth and communication because I want to become a better speaker. Sometimes I read for only 20 minutes, but those 20 minutes often give me ideas that stay with me for the rest of the day. Recently, I started reading English books aloud because they help me improve both my pronunciation and my confidence. Did you notice how every sentence opened the door for another one? You never needed to invent a completely new topic. You simply followed the natural path created by your previous thought. This is exactly how your brain should practice every day. Another powerful technique is what I call the why, how, and what happened next method. Suppose you say, I started exercising. Instead of stopping there, immediately ask yourself why. I started exercising because I wanted to feel healthier and have more energy. Now ask yourself how. I began with short walks every evening, and after a few weeks I added simple strength exercises at home. Then ask yourself what happened next. After 1 month, I noticed I felt more confident, slept better, and had more energy during the day. With only 3 simple questions, 1 sentence has become an interesting story. Now imagine applying this technique to every topic. Your family, your job, your studies, your hobbies, your childhood, your dreams. Suddenly, running out of things to say becomes much less likely because every answer automatically creates several new directions. There is another reason conversation chains are so powerful. They reduce pressure. When learners believe every sentence must be impressive, they become afraid of speaking. They search for advanced vocabulary. They worry about making mistakes. They spend so much time trying to sound intelligent that they stop sounding natural. Fluent communication is not built on impressive sentences. It is built on connected thoughts. People enjoy conversations because they feel natural, not because every sentence contains difficult words. Think about your closest friend. When they tell you about their day, they are not trying to sound like a university professor. They simply continue the story. They describe what happened, explain how they felt, and mention what happened afterward. Their conversation flows because they are sharing connected experiences rather than isolated facts. Your English should feel the same. When you stop trying to impress people and start trying to connect ideas, your speech becomes smoother almost immediately. Your brain relaxes because it no longer has to search for perfection. Instead, it focuses on communication. One exercise can dramatically strengthen this habit. Choose any everyday object around you. A coffee cup, a mobile phone, a backpack, a window. Now speak about that object for 2 full minutes. Not by repeating the same sentence, but by building conversation chains. Describe what it is. Explain why you use it. Talk about when you bought it. Share a memory connected to it. Compare it with something else. Describe how it helps you. Imagine life without it. Offer advice to someone who wants to buy one. Keep asking yourself, what naturally comes next? At first, your brain will resist because it has spent years depending on memorized answers. But after enough repetition, something remarkable begins to happen. Your thoughts start arriving before you ask for them. Your ideas begin connecting automatically. Instead of worrying about finding another sentence, your brain begins searching for another idea. That is the mental bridge you have been looking for. Remember this carefully. Fluent English is not a collection of perfect sentences stored inside your memory. It is a living chain of connected ideas that continues moving even when you forget a word, make a grammar mistake, or pause for a moment. Every conversation becomes easier when your goal is no longer to remember what you studied, but to keep your ideas connected. Once your brain masters that skill, you will discover that speaking English no longer feels like carrying heavy stones uphill. It begins to feel like walking across a bridge that you built yourself, one connected thought at a time. Chapter 6. Make English continue automatically by training daily speaking loops. There is one habit that separates people who understand English from people who can actually speak it for minutes without stopping. Surprisingly, it has very little to do with grammar books, vocabulary lists, or complicated exercises. It has everything to do with repetition. Not the repetition of words, but the repetition of thinking in English. Every fluent speaker has built thousands of mental speaking loops. They have repeated the process of hearing an idea, creating another idea, and expressing it without hesitation so many times that their brain no longer needs to stop and search for the next sentence. Most learners, however, spend years repeating the wrong habit. They read silently. They complete grammar exercises. They underline new vocabulary. They watch English videos without speaking. They believe all of this is preparing them for conversations. But conversations require an entirely different skill. Speaking is a physical and mental action. Your mouth, your ears, your attention, and your thoughts must all work together in real time. Reading about speaking is not the same as speaking. Watching someone else communicate is not the same as training your own voice to continue when your brain wants to become silent. Think about learning to ride a bicycle. You could watch videos about balance for 100 hours. You could memorize every rule about turning, braking, and pedaling. But the first time you sit on the bicycle, your body still has to learn through practice. Speaking English works exactly the same way. Knowledge creates understanding, but repetition creates automatic ability. This is why daily speaking loops are so powerful. A speaking loop is a simple cycle that teaches your brain never to stop after one sentence. Every time you speak, you train yourself to answer, explain, expand, and continue. Instead of giving one short response, you automatically build another sentence, then another, and then another. The goal is not to sound perfect. The goal is to convince your brain that speaking always continues. Imagine someone asks you a very ordinary question. What did you eat for breakfast? Most learners answer with one sentence. I ate eggs and toast. Conversation finished. Now imagine using a speaking loop. I ate eggs and toast this morning because I wanted something quick before work. I usually choose simple food during the week because it saves time. But on weekends, I enjoy cooking a much bigger breakfast for my family. I've noticed that when I start the day with a good meal, I feel much more focused while studying English. The topic never changed. The vocabulary remained simple. But your speaking continued because your brain had learned a habit instead of memorizing an answer. This is the difference between information and training. Information tells you what English looks like. Training teaches your brain how English moves. Another mistake many learners make is believing they need a conversation partner every day in order to improve. Of course, speaking with other people is valuable, but it is not the only way to develop fluency. Before you can speak confidently with others, you must first become comfortable hearing your own voice continue in English. If your own brain cannot keep a conversation alive when you are alone, it will struggle even more when another person is waiting for your answer. That is why solo speaking practice is so important. Choose one everyday topic. Your morning routine. Your favorite movie. A place you visited. A goal you want to achieve. Now speak continuously for 3 minutes. Whenever you feel your brain slowing down, do not stop. Instead, ask yourself another question about the same topic. Why? When? How? Who? What happened next? What did I learn? What would I do differently? Each question creates another loop. Each loop strengthens the mental bridge between your thoughts. Gradually, your brain begins expecting another sentence instead of expecting silence. At first, this exercise feels uncomfortable. You may repeat ideas. You may make grammar mistakes. Sometimes you may pause longer than you want. That is completely normal. Every fluent speaker has gone through this stage, whether they remember it or not. The difference is that they kept speaking through the discomfort instead of waiting to feel ready. There is something fascinating about the human brain. Whatever it experiences repeatedly becomes easier. At first, driving a car feels impossible because every movement requires conscious attention. After enough repetition, you drive while holding a conversation, listening to music, and planning your day. Your actions become automatic because your brain has built strong neural pathways through repeated practice. Speaking English follows the same principle. Every time you continue talking after your first sentence, you strengthen the pathway that says, keep going. Every time you refuse to give up after forgetting one word, you strengthen the pathway that says, find another way. Every time you explain, describe, compare, or tell a story, instead of becoming silent, you teach your brain that communication is more important than perfection. Eventually, these pathways become habits. Then habits become automatic behavior. That is the moment when English begins to feel different. You stop worrying about every grammar rule before opening your mouth. You stop translating every sentence from your native language. You stop measuring every word before speaking. Instead, your attention moves toward the conversation itself. You become curious about the other person. You respond naturally. Your ideas begin connecting one after another without the constant fear of making mistakes. This transformation does not happen because you suddenly discovered a secret vocabulary list or a magical grammar formula. It happens because your brain has finally accepted a new identity. Instead of seeing itself as someone trying to survive an English conversation, it begins seeing itself as someone who naturally continues one. So from today onward, make a promise to yourself. Do not finish your daily English practice after speaking one sentence correctly. Finish only after you have trained your brain to continue speaking beyond the point where it normally becomes silent. Those extra 30 seconds of practice are often more valuable than another hour spent memorizing vocabulary. Always remember this truth. Fluency is not created in the first sentence you speak. It is created in the second, the third, the fourth, and every sentence that comes after them. Those are the moments when your brain is learning to build stronger bridges instead of stronger walls. Every time you keep talking, even imperfectly, you are teaching your mind that English is no longer something to translate, analyze, or fear. It is becoming a language you can think, express, and live in naturally. And that is the day your conversations stop feeling like a test and begin feeling like a part of who you are. Chapter 7. Become the person who never runs out of English again. Everything you have learned in this audiobook leads to one final truth that changes the way you see English forever. Most people believe fluency is something they achieve one day. They imagine there will be a magical moment when every word appears instantly, every sentence sounds perfect, and every conversation becomes effortless. They wait for that day before they allow themselves to feel confident. But fluency does not arrive like a reward. It grows like a habit. The person who speaks English naturally is not someone whose brain never goes blank. It is someone whose brain has learned how to recover every single time it does. That is the real difference. Think about a bridge stretching across a wide river. A weak bridge shakes with every step because it has only a few supports holding it together. A strong bridge remains steady because thousands of small pieces work together to carry the weight. Your English works exactly the same way. Confidence is not built from one perfect conversation. It is built from hundreds of small moments when you chose to continue instead of giving up, explain instead of becoming silent, and communicate instead of chasing perfection. When you first started learning English, every sentence felt like climbing a mountain. You translated every thought. You worried about grammar before speaking. You searched for vocabulary while the conversation continued without you. Every pause felt like failure. Every mistake felt embarrassing. Every blank moment convinced you that you were not good enough. But today, you understand something many learners never discover. The silence between your sentences was never your enemy. The fear of that silence was. The moment you stopped believing that every pause meant failure, your mind became free to think again. The moment you accepted that conversations are built from connected ideas instead of perfect grammar, your speaking became lighter. The moment you learned to keep moving instead of stopping, your confidence quietly began to grow. This is why your goal should never be to become someone who never makes mistakes. Your goal is to become someone who never allows mistakes to end the conversation. Imagine two learners. The first learner forgets one word and immediately becomes silent. They apologize, lose confidence, and spend the rest of the conversation thinking about that one mistake. The second learner forgets the same word. They smile, explain the idea differently, continue the conversation, and a minute later they have already forgotten the mistake because the conversation never stopped. Which learner will become fluent faster? Not the one with the larger vocabulary, the one with the stronger mindset. Because fluency is not controlled only by language. It is controlled by habits. Every day you choose to keep speaking, your brain receives a powerful message. I am someone who can communicate. Every time you explain an idea, instead of giving up, your brain learns that communication is more important than perfection. Every time you continue after a pause, your mind becomes less afraid of future conversations. This is how confidence is built, not in one dramatic moment, but through hundreds of ordinary conversations where you refuse to stop. From this day forward, I want you to change the way you measure your progress. Do not ask yourself, did I speak perfect English today? Instead, ask yourself, did I continue speaking longer than yesterday? Do not ask, did I make grammar mistakes? Ask, did I communicate my ideas successfully? Do not ask, did I remember every vocabulary word? Ask, did I find another way to express myself? These are the questions fluent speakers answer every day, even if they never realize it. There will still be conversations where your mind slows down. There will still be moments when you forget a word, lose your train of thought, or need a few seconds to continue. That is not failure. That is simply another opportunity to strengthen the mental bridge you have been building throughout this audiobook. Remember that every bridge becomes stronger by carrying weight. Every conversation, every pause, every challenge, and every recovery is another piece of training. The conversations that feel difficult today are the very conversations that will make tomorrow feel easy. 1 year from now, you will probably forget the grammar rule you studied this morning. You may even forget many of the vocabulary words you memorized this week, but your brain will never forget the habit of continuing. That habit becomes part of the way you think. It becomes part of the way you communicate. Eventually, it becomes part of who you are. One day, you will be having a conversation in English, and something remarkable will happen. You will answer a question. Then another sentence will appear. Then another. Then another. Several minutes will pass before you suddenly realize something. You were not translating. You were not searching for every word. You were not worrying about every mistake. You were simply sharing your thoughts. That moment will not feel dramatic. It will feel natural. And that is the greatest sign of real fluency. As we reach the end of this audiobook, remember the lesson that connects every chapter. Your brain was never empty. Your English was never missing. The only thing missing was the bridge between your thoughts. Now you know how to build that bridge. One connected idea, one conversation, and one day of consistent practice at a time. So leave this audiobook with one promise to yourself. Never let one forgotten word end a conversation. Never let one mistake silence your voice. Never let one pause convince you that you cannot speak English. Because your journey is no longer about finding the perfect sentence. It is about becoming the person who always finds the next one. Keep speaking. Keep connecting your ideas. Keep building your mental bridge. And before long, you will discover that the English you have been searching for was inside you all along, simply waiting for the confidence to keep moving forward. Congratulations! By reaching the end of this audiobook, you have done something many English learners never do. You did not spend your time chasing another list of vocabulary words or another complicated grammar rule. Instead, you trained the skill that truly separates fluent speakers from everyone else: the ability to keep speaking when your brain wants to stop. Always remember this: your English was never disappearing between sentences. The ideas were always there. The only thing missing was the mental bridge that connected one thought to the next. And now you know how to build that bridge. From today, stop judging yourself by how many mistakes you make. Judge yourself by how many times you choose to continue speaking. Every extra sentence you say is another step toward fluency. Every conversation you finish is another layer of confidence. Every moment you refuse to give up is another victory your future self will thank you for. There will still be days when your mind goes blank. There will still be moments when you pause, forget a word, or lose your train of thought. Do not let those moments discourage you. They are not signs that you are failing. They are signs that your brain is still learning. Every fluent speaker has experienced them. The difference is that they kept going. So make one promise to yourself today. Never stop after the first sentence. Keep adding one more idea, then one more, then one more. Because that is how real fluency is built, not in one perfect conversation, but in thousands of small moments when you choose progress over perfection. If this audiobook helped you see English in a new way, I invite you to become part of this learning journey. Subscribe to the channel because every audiobook we create is designed to train your mind, strengthen your confidence, and help you speak English naturally in real-life conversations. And if you found even one lesson valuable, share this audiobook with someone who also believes their mind goes blank between English sentences. It might be the breakthrough they have been waiting for. Thank you for spending this time with me. Keep practicing, keep trusting the process, and most importantly, keep speaking, even when it isn't perfect. One day, without even realizing it, you will be having a conversation in English, and you'll suddenly notice something extraordinary. Your brain didn't go blank. Your thoughts kept flowing. Your confidence stayed with you. And the bridge you built, one sentence at a time, carried you all the way to fluency. Until our next audiobook, take care of yourself. Keep your mind open, keep your voice active, and remember, your next English sentence is already waiting for you. All you have to do is keep speaking.